nature magically suits a man to his fortunes by making them the fruit of his character.
As one of the oldest inhabitants of Seaford, having arrived here in 1880, although I was born in 1876, which is 84 years ago, I'm now in my 85th year. I think my record of those 80 years may be interesting to those who would have the opportunity and chance of hearing my voice. I'm not going to talk like they've talked in America about from log cabin to White House, but what I will say is this. I want to say that my talk will consist of certain reminiscences dealing from the time when I came to Seaford in 1880 up to the present age. I might say it's a talk from the prison cell in Lewis Jail up to the time I became chairman of the council and first citizen in Seaford, and then later on in 1937 I gained the great honour which to me was the culmination of all my ideas and all my efforts during my long life. I was asked by the Lord Chancellor to become a Justice of the Peace for the County of Sussex, and trusted I might find some satisfaction in all the work that I had done and laboured for Seaford up to that present time. I wrote him a reply and thanked him for the honour and hoped that never would I let down any of the honour that he had given unto me, but be a credit not only to myself but to the town and to the cause which he has called me to serve. Now let us go back. Let us start fresh. Let us go back to the day when I came to Seaford in 1880. My father had been a mason at East Oxford. He left Hastings when I was a baby of 8 months old with 4 children to work on bridges at Oxford as he was a stone mason. After being there nearly 4 years, things turned out very badly. Work was scarce, and he decided that he'd tramp back to the Elm at Hastings, where his first 4 children, of which I was then 4 years of age, were born and lived. He tramped down through the counties. He got to Seaford one day, and there was a house being built there in which afterwards lived Mr. and Mrs. Head. They became the mother of Mrs. Jack and the grandfather of Mr. Jack, or Commander Jack, who also became a councillor. Many a time I've had a chat with him on the past lives and on the past history of Seaford, many an interesting one. But you see now that having arrived there, my father got to get his family here. And so he saved up and borrowed money and sent for us, and we arrived in Seaford, as I say, in 1880, early. When we arrived here at the station, he got a little cottage in 5 Church Lane, a cottage, thatch cottage, that was empty and practically derelict, and we were planted there. My first interesting thoughts about Seaford and incident is this. Until I came to Seaford, although I was born at Hollington, not exactly in Hastings, in Hollington, a little village, and christened in the church in the wood, I'd never seen the sea till I come here, because I'd been in Oxford and there was no sea there. So when one night a great soaring rocket speared across this little cottage and fell in the churchyard, we all woke up and wondered whatever was happening. We got up in that morning, wondering anxiously. We went and rushed out. I was then just over 4 years of age, getting on for 5. Looked across the sea front. I think then the wall that was built by the Bay Estate Company had been built. But lying up against on the beach was a huge ship called the Gannet, bound for London. We told at the time that she turned in at Newhaven, thought she'd passed Beachy Head, and he rammed her into the beach there, and there she laid, a huge cargo boat. A wonderful sight for a boy that never hardly seen the sea. Well, we said we'd got to go to school, but when we got to school there was no one there, and Mr. Paulson, the master, said, "Clear out." There'll be nobody coming here today after a sight such as that. And so we cleared out and we went and saw the sight. Well, she laid there. They never got her off again. But I remember that we had tea colossal lot in our house. Old ship's biscuits that wanted some eating, had to toast them to eat them. All sorts of articles were stored in our cottage, what we recovered from there. Also, we noticed that lighters came alongside and were towed into New Haven Harbour with cargo from her. And practically everything that was on that ship was salvaged. Up on the top there was any amount of barrels and boxes and tea chests and various articles. It was a sight. Well, I went to school, as I said, 5 years of age. School then was not what it is today. You went there in the morning at 9 o'clock. There were 2 rooms. Mr. Pawson was the headmaster and his son was his assistant. And by the way, Mr. Pawson became the clerk to the council. His son became a ratepayer officer. They both passed away, and there's a descendant now still living in Seaford. Well, we arrived there in the morning at 9 o'clock. An old fire had been lit by Mrs. Cheel, who got about 18 pence a week for going along in the morning and lighting 2 fires and sweeping it. The master used to stand with his back to the fire. There used to be an old thing put up in front to draw it up, and we sat and shivered. We used to often talk after he went out at 11:15 to get his lunch, that we should like to have a lunch, but there we were shivering and cold. Well, I never passed an examination. I only remember once a man coming down and giving us a question, but whether there was an examination I never knew, because I never passed. I was always in trouble. I detested the school. I got more punishment than any boy for inattention. But the reason was this: passionately fond of reading. I'd read anything I got out of. And when we had a reading lesson, of course, I'd go on ahead nearly at the end of the story and couldn't find my place, and out I had to come. 3 or 4 cuts on the hand for that. That's about the only thing I was wrong at the school. Well, I played truant until they got sick of me. And at 11 years of age, I ran away. And I expect they said, good riddance, he's nothing but a trouble. You never learn anything. He's only a bad example to all the other boys. And so I ran. I went to Chinton. I heard they wanted a boy there. I saw Mr. Gorringe. He said, now, how old are you, sonny? I said, 13, sir. Looked him right in the face. I was never frightened of anyone. Well, he said, you're rather tiny for your job to start working. What have you done? I said, nothing. Well, he said, you come up, he said, tomorrow morning, and I'll put you in the cow stall. And you can be in the cow stall and try and learn milk. And then you can clean the boots and pick the chicken in the house. Up I went that morning with my basket. When I got up there, I was starting to learn milking. Stayed in there for a week or 2 and picked some chicken. Used to come home at 12 o'clock every day from Chinton, so I need not take me dinner, and then get back in at 2 to get the cows in. Then a little time after that, he said, he said, you better go and be carter boy. Out I went in carter boy. Carter boy had to look after the horses after they come in and bed them down and feed them with the hay and that, and be there in the morning to clean them out. The carters used to come down at 5 o'clock, feed their horses, get ready and go back home and have their breakfast, then back down again to get out at 7 o'clock. And as a carter boy, you had to go with a whip and go in front of the plough, unless it was a 2-horse plough. Well, that was a very good job. And then I had a job as ox boy. The oxman was a Mr. Green, lived in a thatched cottage in Saxon Lane. Today there are his great-great-grandchildren living here. One is Mr. Green, who was a councillor of the Seaford Council. He's often had a talk with me about his old great-great-grandfather. Well, that was a job that I rather liked, looking after oxen. There was no cleaning there, and you only took the yoke off and turned them into the field. I noticed in a week or 2 back there was an article, Oxen on the Sussex Downs in the County Herald. A man gave a description, but he forgot that there was oxen at Chinton. He spoke of oxen being shoed. That's correct, but oxen at Chinton were never shoed. There was a large team of oxen, about 18, at Bishopston, and they'd been known, about a dozen of them, to take a huge wagon to New Haven and bring a load of coal into Bishopston. they were shoed. Mr. Fred Stace, who now lives in the almshouses, told me that he has seen them shoe him, throw him on a triangle and put shoes on him. He's in the council at the present moment, an old age pensioner. Mr. Crowers, who was another old age pensioner living in the almshouses, and whose father was foreman at Chinton, tells me I'm correct. They never shoed them at Chinton because the argument was this: if they shoed them, they were slippery on the roads. But if they did not shoe them, they could use them much more usefully. And when they went taking out the dung in the winter time, and two were yoked to a wagon, they could walk firmly and carefully and not slip all over the show. Well, that was a short period. And then I went, while I was a carter, I went and out them threshing, draw the caving out underneath. But one interesting incident was this. One day the foreman, Mr. Carr, says, Bertie, you're going to earn sixpence this morning, you've got a job on, but keep your eyes open. He said, we're shifting to act set. The threshing tackle's got to go. But mind you this, here's a flag, you've got to walk in front. And when you see cattle come in, or horses, or sheep, stop the machine till they get by. When you get that set, hand your flag over to the driver of the threshing tackle and come home. It was a rather interesting thing that I saw when I was there. I've not seen it in that late years. Ploughing was done by two large, what I call, like threshing engines. There were two engines driven by coal and had to have water. Underneath was a circular thing that ran round and round, on which was called a great steel rope. One of these great engines fixed itself at one end of the field, the other one made its way to the other end. And then they pulled them ploughs, two or three shearers on each plough, and ploughed that field, pulling it one side, and then the other engine pulling it back. And so I think Mr. Garnes used to do about 150 acres every year to help out his ploughing. It was an expensive job, of course, but there it was. It was a strange thing to see two big engines, one at each end of a great ploughed field, and pulling the plough across and doing the work, what would take in a considerable amount of horses. In those days, Mr. Garnes had 4 teams of horses, 18 horses, and 2 odd horses, and carters and other boys. Well, like Buzz, I was a restless individual. I got sick of being on the farm and I chucked it up. Ran away, had a row with a cowman, chased me through the stalls. Mr. Garnes, young Mr. Cross told me the other day, do you remember, Bert, when the old cowman chased you? I said, yes, and I never went back. But Mr. Garnes rode in on his horse that night and told my father that I'd ran away, but I didn't want to penalise me, but if I would come back and apologise to cowman, he'd give me 5 bob. Well, I never made the apology and I never got the 5 bob. Well, they came away. I thought, now what am I going to do? Well, there'd been then, just shortly before then, or just after, a golf course started on the golf links, on the downs. Sheep ran over it, mind you. It was started by a gentleman named Mr. Pink at the house where the council is now. Major Crook, Mr. Cowney, and various other gentlemen. They started a golf club, and they wanted caddies. I became one of the caddies. It was a very small affair, a few holes. We used to collect the flags and put them in a coal cellar, or coal shed, what times. And then time went on, it got bigger, and then we had a caddy master, Tom Cheel, who received a penny from every player for supplying with a caddy. We had badges. I was number 3, a leather buckle thing on your arm with a brass number on it. I was number 3 cabby, class 1. Class 1 got 9pence a round. Second class got 6pence a round. You fought up there in the morning, and as the gentleman come down, so Mr. Tom Cheo said, that's your gentleman, that's your caddy. Well, sometimes there were gentlemen coming down there we know were miserable. We all used to hide up for it in the shed. We didn't want to carry for him, but it got known and we got in trouble. We had to come out there and face it up the question and take everyone that they came. Time went on, and I remember that once they had a meeting. They decided, let me go back. Before that, they built a pavilion for the members. They built a shade at the side of the little cottage for the golf professional. And the first golf professional was Jack Ross, who lived in Croft Lane. A nice Scotsman. I didn't think so afterwards. And next to it was a little shed where we had our lunch. Sixpence for second class, ninepence for first class, a round. You went 2 rounds a day. And if you were lucky, if you carried for a gentleman like I did, Captain Leggett, you could go 3 rounds. He was a master one. Run, ride, hit. And he'd get his 3 rounds in. That was very nice. Well, one day I remember they had a meeting that should they play Sunday. They crowded all around there. And when the vote went, it was Sunday play. We boys were delighted because we thought we should be all right. But the order was no caddies on Sunday. We were aghast, but that was broken sometime afterwards. But amusing me was, as a boy, that the most strongly opponents of Sunday plays were the first to come and play of a Sunday. They were there. Well, time went on. One day we had a shed next to the golf professional, and there was an old board in it so we could peep at him. And one day I come off my round, and when I got there, about 12 o'clock, we used to receive lunch, tuppence for a lunk of cheese and a bottle of lemonade. The members were supplied with a chop which was cooked by the shepherd's wife. That was all. Well, we came in that morning till 12 o'clock, and someone had been shooting at the professional through this hole with a pea shooter. He came in, and when he saw me, he said, "You're the one, you're the criminal I know," and he began to go for me. Well, my spirit didn't take any, but he was a man I was on it by, I went for him. We fought. In come Mr. Russell, the shepherd, and he took his part. In come his son, Jack Russell, he took his part. I got 3. Then in come 2 of my chums, and we began to fight all together until I think things flew. The result was this: we were overpowered. Turned out, Jack Ross got 2 black eyes. I was expelled from the course and told not to appear there again. But I had my revenge. A few weeks afterwards, they decided a match was going to be played between the golfers at Brighton and Seaford golfers. And the trouble was they got to supply enough caddies for every one. Where could they get them? I was standing at the station on the corner when a man came up to me. He said, "Are you Bert Etherton?" I said, "Yes." He said, "They want you down the golf club house to caddy."